I guess we'll call the meeting to order for the hearing for the proposed road, or I guess the finishing of the road behind Murdoch's and Outer Limits Brewery.
So we had the site visit earlier, and we have the survey that is up here. Anybody wants to see it back from 2007, when this road was actually, I believe, laid out. Just never finished. So.
That was all for Act 250, I think is why.
Right. Yeah, not necessarily, that project wasn't only to lay out the road, it was laying out the road as part of the whole total project. So the second, or the next step in this was to have this public hearing. I believe they had the public hearing back then when that one happened as well. I'm still looking for those. There's more than one box upstairs for that project. But when I will find that, to make sure all that stuff's recorded as well when we go forward. So I guess we're just here to discuss what the board thought on the layout of the road.
Well,
And
it seems that it's a little different on the map than where it is exactly now.
Yep. And the next step will be to, we will have the surveyor come back in and make sure everything's right where it says. And there might be some brush clearing on one side there, a little bit of work. After he lays that out, we obviously can have this at another select board meeting to really go over what it looks like and where it is and what we can do moving forward. But the plan would be to, right now, to have a gravel road back there and put it on our list with the state. And get it on there.
I don't know how it actually works with naming it. I sort of put forth, something like Woolen Mill Lane, just to have some differentiation. But I'm not sure how the naming of that, I guess the board votes on it at some point or what.
Yeah, we can have a discussion tonight, and we can vote on that for real when we.
Yeah.
It's time.
But
I mean, I believe it would serve the public well to have that road there. It gets used anyways, and we plow it during the winter. We don't really put the gravel down like we should to maintain it, but that's because it's not a class 3 road currently. So, but once it gets listed with the state, we would maintain the gravel, and there is some drainage back there that gets maintained, and we'll keep plowing it in the wintertime and doing that.
right, so part of the process is turning this to a class 3 road, I guess, and if it's not now.
And that would
Not
end,
just the
at the
dock.
very end of it, we would do, we would file a road opening here at the town office. So I'm hoping to have everything done by either August or September meeting. So have that ready by then. It is gonna depend a little bit on when I can get a surveyor here.
And by having that on the state's list as a new town highway or street, whatever you want to call it, that opens up the funding reimbursement from the state, correct?
Correct, yep. And it's not gonna be much,
Yeah.
but it might be, it'll make up for the little we lost on Carlton Road last year when that was resurveyed, so,
Every little bit helps.
yep. Yeah, cause I think we lost .04 last year on Carlton Road.
There's no way that's .04.
Well, we lost the .04 at the very end, is on there. Oh,
No, I meant
down
the
there.
road.
Right,
It's gonna be a couple hundred feet, maybe.
well, the paved part's not on the list either.
Okay, so
So-
Park Place is not on the list,
Yep.
okay. Alright, so then you're partway there.
Yeah, I guess I can pull that up right now if anybody wants to. So here's the Village Green Road. I don't know if anybody can see that, but there's nothing on
There's
there
nothing
at Park
on there
Place
for Park Place.
at all.
Okay.
And it's not listed on our town roads what the state gives us at all. There is no Park Place to them. The only place you will find Park Place, if you pull up E911 viewer, it lists that road as Park Place, as a private road. And those addresses, of course, I believe are 12, 15, 20, 24 Park Place in Cavendish, so, or Bronxville.
And that's for the townhouses that are there now.
Yep. Those are the only, those four and the other building, all of those buildings right there in that complex, they're all listed as Park Place.
Okay.
So I know it says we have 60 days after the hearing, that we will report on our findings and file the report with the town clerk, so we can do that
Yeah,
within
Yeah,
that time.
'cause-
And hopefully I have a lot more answers by digging through the boxes upstairs on everything else when it was originally done as well.
Yeah, because I guess the September meeting is the 9th. And, today is the 8th, so maybe put it over that meeting over 60 days, so I don't know how that works, but
Yeah, I can look into the, see
what the exact.
what it is, if we have to have a
Yeah.
special one, if there's a little bit of leeway there. I mean, it's been 15, 16 years now, so 17 years it seems like.
Friday, September 6th is 60 days?
Yes, and today.
Yeah.
Or maybe I can have it all done by August.
Yeah, that's like August 12th.
And at one of these meetings, we'll have to vote for the official naming of it too, I would assume.
Yeah, figure that out. So you get a road sign at some point.
Yep. Yeah, we'd have to get a road sign, and it's easy enough to do. I do think it would be difficult. It's not difficult to change the name. I believe you can do that if you want to. Going through E911, that's where you really have to change the name. But we do have the residents there to take into consideration.
I think we should keep it a continuation of Park Place.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I thought
Is it
that
Penrose?
wasn't Park Place. I
Okay.
kind of thought that was, I thought it went further and that was separate. But Park Place then is just that short thing from,
On the,
yeah.
But that's not even on the list either. I mean, it's not on the state list.
that's not even on the state list.
But
But they have addresses there.
they have
So
addresses and they have,
Yeah.
if you look on the E911, it's kind of listed here by the coloring as a private road.
Yeah.
we don't want to change it on them because then you have to let everybody in the world know,
They're
this
changing
bank, that
everything.
bank. Yeah,
Not easy to do.
Yeah.
so I'd rather leave it.
And I don't know how we got that name. I haven't found that in all the information upstairs either. on when it was actually named or anything. so.
Yeah, I don't know if it was ever voted to be named. It might have just been, you know, Rich wrote it in that.
Right, because you needed to have some sort of
Something,
road name
you
in
know,
order to get the
so-
addresses, so it's on 911, you can't have a 911 address without a road name. And maybe it was a few years ago when they started saying you couldn't have more than 3 houses or 3 residents on one shared driveway either. It had to become a new road, so could have been then, which is a little bit more recent.
So our next move is just getting the survey done and seeing.
Our next move is getting the survey done, and I'll have a lot more information by the August select board meeting. We won't have to have another hearing. We can, I think, go from here during select board meetings from here out.
Well, I guess since this survey is done, it's not like you have to do a survey, you just have to take these points and mark them. so
I just would want to make sure we don't put it anywhere where it's not supposed to be.
Less
Right.
involved, yeah.
So I'd
Have them go over it,
Have
review it,
research
mark
and
it.
Do everything.
Yep. have them mark it out. So yeah, it's definitely not as involved and should be fairly, since it was only 2007, it should be a fairly easier project for them. And you can see by the prints they do have, or by the survey, they have put in a lot of stakes and found some that were there, so they should be there,
Yeah.
barring any snowplows.
How you doing?
I should have sent out a reminder, we had the site visit and
Oh, yeah,
hearing.
yeah, totally spaced that one. Yeah.
So now we're just pretty much talking about Park Place and next steps, and I don't know if you want to pass that survey down, so Bob, take a look.
Okay, an extra agenda.
Yeah.
No, I should have,
There you go, sir.
Okay.
I can print that out.
Zoom down, looked at it.
We did?
We did.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is what we just were on. So it's this way.
You know,
We
I,
wanna-
Yeah.
we
every
wanna
week,
build.
or month, I go through this, I should know by now to have them. So we'll have the surveyor come in and figure out exactly
fine.
where it's at.
Okay.
Mark pins and stuff.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about down there at the site visit,
Uh-huh.
we might leave room and be able to have some parking back there, whether
Yeah.
it's, once it gets laid out and really see what it looks like. Be nice for those businesses to have a little more parking,
Yeah, it would be.
or any business down there, I mean, it's town road, whether
Right.
it's down, you know, the bakery, those guys, or more for the concerts or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
Should be. I would think.
Should be good.
I was looking for the width, but I don't see it right off.
Thank you.
If there's anything else, I'll move to adjourn the hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting's adjourned.
In the order, we'll approve the minutes of June 10th and June 28th, 24. Everybody see them?
Yep.
What is your pleasure?
We approve the minutes as written for June 10th and June 28th.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Do you need to adjust anything, Rick?
I do not. Well, actually, I should just mention now, I guess, item number 1 said town clerk to present errors and omissions. She will not be able to make it, so it will just be by me. So
Okay. Here, citizens.
I'm another
You're on for the school,
I'm sorry?
for the school?
Yeah?
Just to make it clear, there is nothing the select board can do. It is out of our hands. If you got complaints, we'll listen, but we cannot vote on anything. We cannot make any judgment or anything. It has nothing to do with us now.
I'll clarify my intent for being here,
Yeah.
but I was just gonna ask the procedure. Is there a place we're supposed to stand or a way we're supposed to
No,
introduce
you can be right
ourselves?
there. We can all hear
Stand
you.
where you are if you want.
Okay.
Stand.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So I'm Wendy McNaughton. We just live over in Proctorsville. I have two little kids, and I also am a teacher in the West Rutland School District, a ways from here. So I've come, as most of you know, to talk about the restructuring of the schools, and this is for a couple of different reasons. One is that I would like to start the conversation within Cavendish specifically. This has been a supervisory union level conversation that really hasn't been, I feel, open enough to the people and the citizens and the students and those who are involved most directly within town. So I wanted, first of all, to talk here because I know you will hear from the people who live here. I also have some specific requests to make from the board about ways that you could be helpful in this process, as well as just some thoughts about what might be coming so that the board can think about what to plan for as well. So that's my intent in raising this issue here tonight. So the district has been trying to think about how to restructure all three schools. So we're talking about Green Mountain, which is highly underutilized in its capacity. We're talking about Chester Andover School, which is not at capacity, but is struggling at their seams with the number of students that they have and is very high capacity. And then we certainly have Cavendish Elementary, which is lower, though not as low a ratio as Green Mountain is in their numbers. And so they've been trying to figure out how to, what they call, right size these three schools. And there was a survey sent out that lots of people in town were able to respond to as well. And no one within Cavendish picked within their top three of all the choices this idea of moving the 6th grade up to the high school. But that is currently the option that appears to be what the majority of the restructuring committee for our supervisory union is about to vote for. And if that happens, that decision will probably be made before the summer is out, largely because they're trying to meet deadlines for school contracts to make this happen within a year. But my push for talking about this now is, yeah, people are away over the summer, so are the teachers, and the final decision is going to be made now about how that's going to happen. And part of the issue here is that we haven't yet seen the financial data. We don't know what benefit there would be financially to taking kids to Chester and or what that cost would be. We do have a sense that it would be academically and socially and emotionally a poor choice for our students. And the obvious result is that it does the opposite in terms of numbers for what Cavendish Elementary School needs, because we need more utilization of our school. There are some other options the school is working on, such as opening a preschool, but even doing that will not make the numbers long-term sustainable. That will make the numbers just so that they're like consistent for now. And the push and the message I'm seeming to get from those non-Cavendish representatives of the restructuring committee and the school board seems to be that they're not intending to support Cavendish Elementary in the long term. And there's been quite a bit of discussion about alternatives, about whether something could be done with a high school, about whether we could change our grade level, whether we could change in their community, unless the restructuring committee votes for these things, or unless Cavendish Elementary withdraws from the supervisory union. Those aren't things we can do. We can, at a preschool, that we can do at our school-based level, but we don't have any flexibility to go against whatever decision they make unless we withdraw from the supervisory union. That process is a very lengthy process. My hope is that process would both start a conversation to encourage the rest of the supervisory union to talk about other options than moving our 6th grade up to the high school. But it also would give us a backup as a town so that if we do just get pushed into moving our sixth graders up, then we could eventually, once we make it happen, have greater flexibility to consider some other options for us. So as I mentioned earlier, my first point in bringing this up is because I'd just like to hear from anyone else within our town where we're not within the constraints of a restructuring committee meeting and the motions that they're trying to make. But there is some leeway that the town could support the process in terms of giving us guidance or counsel, whether it be legal counsel or any information you have about going through the process of withdrawing from a district. It also could be support or counsel in the process of the study that would have to be done after the petition were received. And so whether that is budgeting assistance or whether that is counsel or advice or legal advice, there are times where the town could be involved in those two pieces of the process upcoming. But beyond just starting this conversation, the other two messages.
Recording in progress.
Sorry. The other two messages to the select board are, number one, we really need to start planning for and be prepared for what happens if the town does petition to withdraw. And what does it mean for Cavendish at large and or for the select board if we are no longer part of that supervisory union? And then the other long-term piece for the select board perhaps to plan for is what does happen if that doesn't occur and our sixth graders are moved up to the high school and our numbers continue to decline, and in the near foreseeable future, I can probably count it on one hand, our elementary school closes, and then that does become an issue for the town, whether that's tax base or the vitality of our community or the way that we interact and run our spaces and our library right next door. So part of this is just sort of a heads up, try to start thinking about where does the role of the town, the municipality, and the select board come in if either of those two things do happen. Thank you.
I have a question just for you. I was wondering, can the decision be made to restructure if there's an active petition from a town? Do you know?
So the first petition, my recommendation would be the first petition is just from our town, but I believe we have to petition all three towns to make the withdrawal. And then the study is set up by the supervisory union. And the whole process of the study and then the report to the state and then the state back to us and then setting up the plan for where you'd move forward next, it may be a multi-year process.
Right.
There is at least a year before the district can physically move the sixth grade up to the high school. And so these two things may overlap, but my hope would be that it either would pressure a conversation on the other end, or by the time we've spent 1 year trying our sixth grade up there, then we might have some flexibility open to us to do something different than that.
It was my understanding from something Mike mentioned that if one of those towns vote not to let us go, then that's it. We don't, it's not like we just vote and
Yes.
decide.
So you do need a petition, you need to vote from all the towns. There's a fairly thorough study that happens. My hope would be that another town would care more about where their own kids are going and what's happening with their students rather than requiring another town does something. But that's another reason why I really would push for more community conversations in any place that I could find them as well. And one of the apparent options would be to move Chester students who want to Cavendish. And that request is going to be made by the board, but that request is being made to those towns without enough time for those families to change their minds, without any information about the benefits of our school. They didn't tell them our test scores are higher. They didn't tell them our class sizes are smaller, without any information about transportation. And so I think we could get some Chester families here. I know two, in fact, who were like, oh, I would have done that had I known that. And so there are certainly other options. But if the school board votes to move our students up, we won't be able to change that without just pulling out of the whole thing.
Because I know it is quite the process. They don't make it easy
Absolutely.
at all.
However, there was a study that recently came out that showed that this supervisory union does not really, it is not cost effective. A lot of towns are very unhappy with it. And we need to look at the numbers. This year, we're probably gonna have 70 or less students at CTES. The state's already saying elementary schools should have at least 100 students. And we're gonna see more and more of that because they wanna see things close. It's not like we're suddenly gonna get a huge influx of young families. In fact, every time that a big budget increase happens for education, we lose residents. And I follow this really, really closely because that's part of my job with the Historical Society. And who leaves? Well, it's often the older people who are on fixed income and cannot afford it. They don't want, as they tell me, I don't want to be in the book. The last time this happened, nobody cared that the Historical Society lost 5, 6 really dedicated volunteers. They couldn't afford it anymore. And right now, there are 5 houses up on that pond that are for sale. And a portion of that is the big tax increase. So you have to look at this stuff. You just can't do this stuff in a vacuum. But the vote is done, so that's not really an issue. But there are repercussions happening. And I'm aware of them, and I hear from people. So, FYI only.
So I'm Sarah Stoll, and I live out on 20 Mile Stream, and I had 2 kids that went here and to Green Mountain. And my interest when Wendy suggested bringing this here is, I think it's actually a larger issue than simply school. And maybe school in town was more connected in the days of Jim Valentine when he was on both boards, or I'm not sure, right?
But the school had a board.
Well, that's a good point, Margot. But to me, I think, I know you guys have started to talk about the fact that it's outside of school stuff, it's almost impossible for people working at a salary around here to buy a house here. Like, we have a lot of issues in town that are happening around Vermont and in country. I look at it and I think we should be talking about this at the community level, because this is about community development. It's about whether or not we become we become a deeper community of just folks who can afford to live here, or a tourist trade, or whether we continue to be Cavendish, where we do have, you know, a school and concerts on the green and that type of thing. So I think we need to look at the school issue at a town level, because a school is what draws young families in, right? And we've been having, you know, we're not seeing that happen at the moment, but we had a lot of great ideas for the whole SU during the Act 46 conversations, right? And on the school board side of things, it would seem, and maybe it's because there's a lot of turnover on the school board, perhaps that's the reason, or perhaps it's because the school board feels particularly encumbered to deal with the educational tax issue, who knows? But none of those issues have been discussed. Like, you know, Mike can probably remember some of them. There's actually like a printed thing at the end of Act 46, all of the hopes and dreams that we had for the schools in the area. So I think let's go back to look at what are our hopes and dreams for a school in our town, and heck, for the whole district if we stay in it, but not from the perspective just of education and educational tax rates, but what does it mean for this town? What will it look like when this town becomes a place where people no longer live, when it's harder and harder to, you know, to say, oh yeah, I live at the old Ryford farm, and I'm not, this is not a comment about new folks. New folks should come. I want them to come and stay. And so rather than having this be a tourist destination, or in addition to having it be a tourist destination where people come for a week or for the weekend, what are we doing as a town to say, hey, come live here. This is a great place to live. And you know, Margot looks at history in one perspective, and I do a lot of looking at history in the state of Vermont. Our kids have always left. They left after the Civil War. Like, the whole outward motion, Vermont's a hard place to live. You kind of got to love it to live here. We've lost people for 150 years, right? And if you look at what brings people in, it's always been migration. It's either immigrants from other countries or immigrants from other places.
But they come because they're jobs.
so let me finish, Margot. I'm actually, they didn't. The hippies who increased our population by about 400, doubled it, did not come because there were jobs. They came because they wanted to do back to the land things, and they eventually integrated. So again, I don't want to get into a conversation about that, but we need people to migrate to Vermont. And I don't see people migrating full-time to Vermont who are young enough to support our town unless we have a school. So that's why I want to add to this conversation. Let's have it. Let's think about it from a Cavendish perspective as well as from a Green Mountain Unified School District perspective, because the school district may make choices that aren't so great for our town. And I also just wanted to suggest, and this is something we could take back to the school board, but I think that the survey needs to be a weighted survey. I mean, we have less representatives due to population on the school board. And I think that's something that we could potentially request, is let's do another survey that's a weighted survey, so that if we do our effort to get as much, as many people out to fill out the survey, we're at least those votes are counting on a level playing field with our counterparts in towns, certainly Chester that's bigger, and it gives Andover and Baltimore sort of a bigger shot as well.
But the first step in any of this is to have the petition.
Yes.
Right.
But the other thing is, what about the planning commission getting involved? Because are people aware that we've now lost not only the Episcopal Church, but we've lost Holy Name of Mary? So out of our 4 churches in Proctorsville, 2 are now, of our 5, 2 are gone. There are real big changes happening in our community because of the flood. You and I both know, we're both still working on this. We know where those vulnerable spots are. We're all holding our breath to get through this week, and quite frankly, through the hurricane season. Any of this can upset the apple cart in a huge way, and I really think that the Orton Foundation does this heart and soul planning for communities, and I think it might be time to bring that to Cavendish. It can deal with the school issues, it can deal with housing, it can deal with the myriad of issues that we're facing that come to you in piecemeal. Let's just look at the whole thing, and it's got to go on. It should come through the Planning Commission. Does that make sense?
Any comments from the board?
Well, my own comment is that you guys have the energy, and I think you should have a forum, and the publicity is important, and to get it out there.
Yeah.
So if you organize some sort of forum where this is discussed in a public place and get the advertising for that, it brings it up, and public pressure is a viable thing. They may want to decide, but if there's a public pressure and they see an upswelling, they, would reconsider possibly. So I think that's an important first step, because the petition thing is good, but that's, like you said, is more of a longer term thing.
But if a forum were led by the town and the municipality rather than the PTO?
I don't know. I think having the people do it is what gets, the interest and the media into it, because it's a grassroots. This is official stuff, and but you get a good grassroots movement going there, and I think you got a lot more on the ball. So I don't know. I mean, that's that's my feeling anyway.
Gentleman behind you first.
Hi,
Go
I'm
ahead.
Steve Perrone. I'm on the Green Mountain Board. First of all, the process that has resulted in this preferred choice of the majority of the board of sending 6th graders to the high school has been rushed. The process has been led by Chester representatives. The thing has been, the survey itself is terribly flawed, as we've heard. There was no description at all about why Chester families might want to entertain sending their kids to Cavendish Elementary School. Clearly, you have one school that's over capacity and one that's under capacity. It's not rocket science. It's a matter of outreach. The thing I want to mention, and it's really important and relevant to the board, when I came here, when we were doing the school bond in 2022, Stephen Plunkett was on the board, and he was upset. He was upset that There was a discussion about blowing out Cavendish Town Elementary School and putting the district offices there or possibly closing it. He was appalled that there was so little civic engagement, and as you know, his whole deal was civic engagement. He gave me a book, he started tutoring me on civic engagement, and you know, I've tried. I'm not Stephen Plunkett, but my point is that he saw this as, you know, an asset that the town had cultivated over many, many years that was taken by the TRCU post Act 46, and that the town has a say in how that asset would be used, especially now. I'll be very, very direct. If these sixth graders go to the high school and the enrollment falls below 50, Emily Kornheiser has literally said, I'm coming after schools with less than 100 kids. This is...
I'm sorry, who?
Emily Kornheiser is the head of the Vermont Ways and Means Committee. She's been charged with looking at school construction and the viability of under-enrolled schools and buildings that have reached the end of life. I think that there's another story to this, which is GM is vastly under-enrolled and has reached the end of its life, and I think there's a bit of concern about what their enrollment looks like and how they're going to sustain that. As you know, the bond failed. The items on the bond constitute $20 million that was not raised. In addition to that, there's PCB remediation, or actually construction now, because you can't just remediate it. That's going to result in a $30 million investment, likely, given current interest rates, to get this school up to 20th century standards. In any event, there is a lot of tension within the Green Mountain District. Coming back to Cavendish, we have an asset here. We have a wonderful team that's been built. We have a great reputation, and people like me bought in Cavendish specifically to have access to the school. And then, you know, we have Act 46 and all these other pressures. But there are a lot of people who have built their lives around this community asset, and that's where the local government comes in. You built it, they usurped it, and now they're talking about putting it in a position where it's very, very vulnerable.
John, do you have a comment?
I'm just going to say I agree 100% that you need to, first of all, where you're ahead of the game a little bit. Incidentally, I'm John Harrison, your representative. Attending the SU meeting is absolutely paramount. Making your voices known is paramount. What you're talking about here isn't unique to Cavendish, and it isn't unique to Two Rivers. It's happening all over the state where small schools are under pressure. And everybody understands and appreciates the fact that as soon as you close a school, it rips the heart out of a lot of communities. And that's a tough nut to swallow. In a minute, I'm going to talk about the yield bill, and maybe that'll put a little bit of perspective on why it went up so much. And but I think you're on the right track. Be proactive instead of sitting back and hoping for the best.
I just wanted to address your point, George, which I think, and Wendy, you've done most of the work on this, but grassroots is awesome. You know me, George. Like, I'm an activist. I'm all about grassroots. However, coming up with the town supports this or co-sponsors this and let this group of people do the work, I think makes a difference. It may be that in statute, there's nothing that the select board can do right now, but you are citizens of this town, and we elected you to, keep the roads going, but also to keep the town going. And I just think about, Bob, just to think about the amazing work that you guys do recruiting young people to the fire department, right? Our fire department is probably better known than our school. But you're not getting any younger. You're good at what you do because you bring around those little buggers. And if those little buggers aren't here for you to recruit, our fire department's not going anywhere either. So I just want to bring it back to it. It is incumbent on all of us. And I think that the select board can have a role in saying, we want to be part of this process, or we support this, this organizing. And I think that that is important. It's strategic. When you do grassroots organizing, you find your places of power to move things along. And so coming to you is part of a strategy that says, don't make it just be the PTO, right? We all need those kids. They're either gonna smash our mailboxes or they're gonna pick them up. So,
I don't think there's anybody
yeah.
on the board who wants to see this school closed. And so, in that sense, I agree that, there could be something where, we have a sort of a unified meeting or something. But I think the brunt of that, like I said, and you said, would have to be citizen generated more as far as.
Which is here, but there's two pieces to this process, and one is this petition and the steps through a possible withdrawal, which I know your own knowledge is helpful in addition to town resources may be helpful in, and then there is also the process of the study itself, and again, there would be resources and knowledge that are helpful for the municipality in that part. But also we just want your opinions as part of that. Because so far what our supervisory union's been hearing from the most is Chester. And we need the voice here from the people stronger, and if there is an impact or input from the town, those would be two parts that would be very valuable to have the town advice in.
Abe first.
Abraham Gross, former school board member. Thank you again, Steve. Very happy for that vote, and not voting for me. So I think what I think one of the things that needs to happen is that the select board could authorize the town council, the lawyer, to work with the PTO, because there are some legal questions and processes and such, and somebody has to pay for that, and that you could, give some town resource support for the legal counsel to back up the PTO and the volunteers and the school board members, because the school board members need the legal help as well, but the school district lawyer is not going to be real helpful at trying to dismantle the school district. So that's one thing that I think you could do this evening that would be a benefit and a help, and relatively small in terms of resources. The second thing is, it seems to me that there should be a way to do multiple things at once. To lean on them and say, listen, this 6th grade thing is stupid for kids, it's stupid for educational purposes, it's just bad. Because if nothing else, the PCB levels for 6th graders are significantly lower. The acceptable limits for non-high schoolers are significantly lower, and as you get younger and younger, it just doesn't make sense. So I think you could push the 6th grade thing. You could push the pulling out of the district thing with the and jumping through all the hoops and the petitions in all the towns. You could do that at the same time. You could also, I think, make a very strong argument that it is time for GM to go. They built it in the wrong part of Chester, because they wanted to reach Rockingham. They didn't want to reach Cavendish. They could have put it in Gassets, and they didn't. The PCBs is an issue, the declining, no other towns, unless they have to send their kids there, they don't send their kids there. It used to be that Londonderry or Floodbrook would send kids, all the kids would go to GM. None of those kids go to GM anymore. It is a slowly declining school, as sad as that is. You could push that as well. And I can't imagine that the Chester voters really want to drop $30 million and they really are setting money on fire to heat that place with the windows open. I mean, it's a money pit. The only thing to do with a money pit is walk away. And I think that the Chester voters and the Andover voters, we know the Andover voters don't want to be part of the union anymore. I can't imagine the Baltimore voters really want to be paying for that boondoggle of a building. It's time for GM to go. So you could push that, push pulling out, push the against the 6th grade thing, all at the same time, But we are going to need some legal help because that's a lot of paperwork and things. And that's where I think you guys could come in tonight.
Margot?
I hear what Abe is saying, and it makes sense, but I think we're only hearing from the voters that are here. We really need to assess where the community is before we engage legal counsel from the town. I mean, I just think, you know, there was a forum last year, a lot of people showed up at the forum at the school. There was sentiment for all of this. However, there was no follow-through. So there were a lot of good ideas put forward and nothing happened with that. So if something is gonna happen this time, is the petition that you wanna start not to move the sixth grade, is that step one, or do you wanna jump right to a petition to withdraw from?
We can't petition to not move the sixth grade. I showed up at every one of those meetings and told them not to move the sixth grade.
Okay, so you're saying really then, the petition would be for Cavendish to withdraw from the TRSU?
Yes.
That's your petition, is that what you want, Kate?
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
I
okay.
think, but we don't even know what to write on the petition, Margot. And so to have access to legal counsel to just simply, are we in a line with the statute that is so complicated that I look at it and like, I don't know what this means. If we could have an hour with the town's attorney or somebody to say,
Has Andover
what do you
already
write
done
on the
this?
petition and.
Andover has been unsuccessful and difficult to reach.
Yes.
Well, I know how to get a hold of Andover. I've got we both have a very good contact
But the
there.
way they've done the
I've been in touch.
process has been
There's some deaths.
unsuccessful.
They're not available on the week. They weren't available on the weekend, so. Susie, I didn't get to Susie, but.
I can get to Susie.
They
I
also
don't
have
know.
less motivation, right? I
No, they're
think they
very-
are motivated, but
yeah.
we have serious risk of losing our school and the vitality of our community. So I do think we have an opportunity to make more progress.
One thing you have to be aware of too with legal stuff is that many lawyers
Yeah.
are, you know, specifying an area. So to have somebody that knows all about town business to say they know and can help you with the statutes, it might be very expensive because they're gonna be learning themselves. So you wanna find a lawyer or some group that knows that stuff. So I don't know what that resource might be, but I think that that's something.
Go ahead, Steve.
You know, for whatever reasons, and I can't read them, this is moving as fast as they can possibly move it. They're trying to get it into, you know, into the budget for 2026, which needs to be completed, I guess, by August. So the speed with which this is coming together is a little crazy. The public forums have been haphazard at best. I mean, doing them in the middle of the summer when people are on vacation, on the hottest day of the year, and you know, the civic participation needs to be improved, the discourse needs to be improved, the survey needs to be clearer, and more voices need to be heard. Getting back to the lawyers, if they're so intent on getting this going now, you know, I think that if this were a different community, there would be an injunction to say, hold on, we haven't looked at this clearly. We need to really assess the economic impact of this. We need to assess what this is going to do to the communities. We need to take a clear look at what the participants really want, not just the people who are enrolled in the school, but you know, the people who may be coming into the school, other taxpayers. You know, there's been no population modeling. There's been no discussion with anybody who has a sense of where our demographics are going. It needs to be just sorted out in a clearer way. The decision is going to be made. I don't have a problem with making a decision. This is very, very rushed and very haphazard. So injunction would be a big help.
Abe?
So you may remember the whole thing with the open meeting violation on the school board. The only reason that got improved was because Sean Cunningham got a lawyer to say, listen, you are not following the process, you are not following the rules, and to get them to do it. When I was on the board and I talked to Lauren about, you know, this wasn't done the proper way, she goes, and again, Lauren's a very good lawyer, right? But she said, you know, the only way, you know, yes, that wasn't the right way for that to happen, but the only way you can do something if somebody says that they're going to sue and they have to bring it through the legal process to make sure that it is actually going the way that it's supposed to go. That's the only, otherwise, it's whatever the board, does, that's what they did, and that's what it is, unless somebody says, hey, no, that's not right. And, I understand that not all lawyers do all things, but hopefully the town's attorney would be able to say, yes, I can do this, or here's who you need to talk to, and, and again, get some sort of level of guidance to the next step that needs to be done. I would hope that the town's attorney is pretty good in municipal law and following statute and such, but who knows? Like that would be the thing that I think is important, because if you go for, you go to the meeting, you get to talk for 2 minutes, unless somebody says you can have their 2 minutes, and they just ignore you, unless you're on the board.
And sometimes they ignore you then too.
Yeah.
Any other
Sounds
comments from the board?
I think it sounds like you need, if you want to move fast, all you could do, you'd have to organize some sort of
Quick.
protest and get a bunch of people out right down at either a meeting or at something where it's really, some sort of show, because like you said, it's moving so fast. That's, you just don't have time to have a law of, processes back and forth. I mean, that may happen for some longer term thing, but if it's such a quick decision, what choice do you have?
George, when do you want to take over the superintendent's office? Because it wouldn't take, all the people here, we could take over the building. I am not kidding.
Yeah.
It would not be
We
difficult.
show up there
We could
and
just
in a
sit in the
peaceful
waiting
way.
room
I
and
don't
start
want
singing,
January
and they
6th.
would not be able to get rid
He'll
of
bring his
us.
kids, it'll fill the space.
I'm serious.
Yeah. I mean, but that's, that's, some activists have to organize that and set it up.
All right, Wendy, you gotta,
Yeah, just a quick comment on the financial piece here. I mean, personally, academically, socially, emotionally, this is all a bad idea for our town and for the kids, right? But we just wanted to reiterate, we don't actually have the financials, just so you guys are aware, of how a move like this will affect the supervisory union overall. They have not done a cost analysis of what it will cost to get our 6th graders to Cavendish. What it will cost will change the building, because now there's a group of younger students in it. And we don't actually know if this move will save anyone any money. Either way, I would vote it down if I could. But what makes me really mad is when someone sacrifices our kids or our town and it doesn't even make the financial benefit that they say it's going to do. And Act 46, has done that repeatedly. And so then the bigger tax issue and town issue here is, I moved to town because of the school across the street from my house.
Same.
And I may very well move out of town because of that too.
any other comments?
Well, I was gonna ask Rick, I mean, I know, budget's set and that, but I mean, if we did, is there any leeway for some sort of legal help, or is that like
Legal aid.
very difficult, or what do you think?
I don't even, I'm not even gonna guess on what it would cost. Because like you said before, I'm not sure the town's attorney would be the best to even work on the school stuff like this, because it is quite a bit different from the town. I mean, I can always ask him if he's even somebody who would be comfortable with that.
At this point, it's about writing petitions and reading state statutes. It's-
Which is right in his
And I
wheelhouse.
think
but-
strategically, it's also about the select board, the town, making a point to the school board that you're interested. That's just strategic. It's showing that it's not just a few parents who might move out and a few ex-parents, or I guess I'm not an ex-parent. Whatever, ex-school parents.
We have that on video, but let's not let that get out.
Just for the
Let's not
record, I
let that
took
get
my kid
out.
to the doctor twice today, so I think I'm still parenting,
Okay.
more or less.
Well, and again, if we took over the superintendent's office, it looks a lot better. If Sarah and I are there linked arms and we're singing, that's all well and good, and we'll get written off. If Proctorsville chief and former vice principal and school, select board members are dragged off, that has a whole different feel and says something completely different to everybody who shows up. You know, we'll get Kevin Hughes to come down, right? You know, they can drag him away. We'll get Matt Birmingham to come down, right? You know, we'll fill the space with people that they do not want to push around, and we'll have that conversation and say, well, you know, we'll just come back until you put the 6th grade back. If we have to, that's what we'll do.
Has anybody talked to the new superintendent?
Yes.
And what was his response?
He's an executive, he's a very competent executive. We had a discussion today about doing Cavendish as a K through 8, potentially closing the high school, doing Chester as a K through 8, dissolving the GM and combining with TRSU and trying to manage those assets and creating other scenarios, not the least of which is closing GM and giving school choice to everybody.
Is that the answer? Sorry, it's kind of not part of it, but if they close GM, is that the answer, just to make it school choice?
Yeah, there's going to be, in 8 years, there'll be 140 9th to 12th graders there. I mean, we are really talking about a microscopic.
Well, I went there, I am well aware.
Okay, all right, but it's really about the birth rate and about the values and sustaining. The building was made for 750. You know, if it weren't for the PCBs, you could put Chester Andover Elementary School in the building.
Yes, they were there when I went there.
Great. And
5th and 6th grade.
You know, sell the elementary school for apartments or low-income housing or whatever, and subsidize the rebuilding. Anyway, we had a good conversation. He is creative. He understands that this is moving very fast. And, you know, I think there's room. He's not Lauren. He doesn't, you know, it's not, you know, this is the law, and, you know, this is Chester, where I live and my friends are and my business is. It's a guy with an open mind. So.
This is part of why we want to slow this process down. We are about to get a new superintendent. We've had a principal for just a year. We're about to open a preschool at the school, and yet they are voting within the next month. And so the only viable way that we can see, both for leverage or for long-term turnaround, is this withdrawal process.
So you're not asking the board to form an opinion or take a side. It's more that the urgency is to slow the process down so that it's more considered.
I think
That is
Well, both.
Yeah. Well, listen, you're not gonna get a board to pivot in 1 month, get legal resources and get all these things to move. So kind of one thing at a time, which is, it sounds as though there's a general consensus that to at least slow the process down so the board can decide how much it wants to be involved. The board can set up a subcommittee and figure out what its opinion is on the whole matter. But you can't move that quickly.
Right.
So if there's resources to be thrown at this, it's simply to slow things down at this point.
Could I just get your name for the minutes?
My name is Andrew Amstutz.
Thank you.
It doesn't mean that some of these other things can't happen concurrently.
Yeah.
But your biggest pressing thing right now is to even make sure a petition that is written correctly.
We have our lawyer look at that.
That we,
If everybody is good with that, we'll have our lawyer look at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Just a second. So the board in consensus to have the town lawyer look at it and then get back to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, John?
I will say that last session, I was on the education committee when the current rules were passed into law. And at that time, there were 2 or 3 schools that were trying to do what you're talking about, and there were carve-outs put into the law to allow them a little bit easier path to complete their process. But what came out of the bill was exactly what you're saying. It's possible, but it's extremely difficult. Purposely, because we don't want every school district, oh, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be there. But what has happened, I may get the town wrong, I think it's either Ripton or Lincoln.
Yeah, it's Ripton.
Which one?
I think it's Ripton.
Yeah, successfully got out, and then all of a sudden they realized that they needed the services that the SU was providing, and the SU said, We don't have to do it if we don't want to. And I believe they wanted to get back in, and the NHU said no. So be careful what you wish for.
That's part of the study that has to be done, is during that withdrawal process, there's a study done to examine what loss there would be and what
Right.
the benefit is.
Right.
And you have to also in that process create a plan for how you will cover those
You're right.
resources. And so at this point, we don't know which plan it could be.
You've read it, and I commend you. It's 162 pages.
It could be joining another school, it could be changing our grade range.
You're right.
Could be any number of things, but you have to first get people to agree to consider the withdrawal, and you have to do that in every town, and I'd like to start in Cavendish.
Abe?
The other, so this is all good, and thank you very much. I think that's all good things. This year, there is a need, and I'm announcing today the need and intention to start the Tracy Churchill Fan Club and Support. Because we lost a special educator who worked 60 hours a week of her own volition, but she was fantastic. Miss Nancy was fantastic. She was working 60 hours a week, and they did not replace her. And so Tracy is the only special educator in the elementary school, which means there's going to be a lot of time that people are going to need to say, hey, this IEP isn't being followed, that's federal law you are breaking, and it's not Tracy's responsibility to make up the gap that you have created. And so the special ed parents, the parents of special ed students, are going to need to band together and really hold the district's feet to the fire and have them be compliant. Because we love our special educators, we do not want to burn them out. And so it's going to be a real big issue, and the only way to do that is with solidarity, because when they carve everybody off into one little IEP meeting, it's incredibly overwhelming. And so everybody just sort of has to be on the same, same page and be like, hey, this isn't happening. All right, let's get the Vermont Parent Network involved immediately. It is not going to be pretty this year. All right, that's my other piece.
John, are you here for something else under Here Citizens? John,
Pardon me?
are you here for something else?
Yes.
Under Here, okay, you can have the floor for that.
Sorry, I was daydreaming.
Now you have the floor, he said.
What do you hear?
Go ahead, now you can go. The floor is yours.
Still daydreaming. I'd like to stand up here so I can look at the people I'm talking to. It wasn't first on my list, but I'll talk first about the yield bill. That's one that has really created a lot of stir, not only in this community, but throughout the state. Remind you that the number that was released in December, which is required by law, the Joint Fiscal Office is required to come up with a projected increase, and they come out with a 20%. In the meantime, the legislature started looking at it seriously on what they could do to carve it down. And the final product, as I think most people know, was 13.8. I'd like to just quickly, and this is as much as anything for the public access people, go over how Vermont funds education. Most people, I think a lot of people sitting there know exactly how, but 26% of the education fund is from homestead property taxes, 41% is from non-homestead, 100% of the state's sales and use tax goes into the education fund. 33% of the vehicle purchase use tax, when you buy a new vehicle, goes into the education fund. 25% of the rooms and meals and alcohol tax goes into the education fund. 100% of the lottery goes into the education fund. The general education payment is $1.37 billion. That's with a B. The next largest cost is special ed, which is $198 million. And after that comes there's small school support, transportation aid, and technical education. So that is a very brief description, and a lot of people, when they receive their bill, they think that is what pays for all education, and it's not even close. So anyway, so what happened on the yield bill, to carve it down from the 20%, new numbers were coming out. Why did it jump up so much this time? Several things. I think the economy was in a COVID hangover from the stimulus money that was poured into the economy. Sales tax revenues were very robust because people were getting a check, so they went rushed over to Runnings and bought a kayak or something. No, hopefully they went to Rutland and bought the kayak. So revenue streams have dropped back to the levels we saw pre-COVID. There was a significant increase during COVID, mainly from the influx of the billions of dollars that came into the economy. Several things that, don't forget, this is really important. The legislature does not come up with the number we're going to spend on education. The taxpayers do. When you folks vote your school budget, it goes into the list, and when the total comes out, which is just being finalized in the last few weeks, so that the yield bill could actually, the actual numbers could be released. The legislature's job is to figure out how are we going to come up with enough money to do what the voters have authorized to be spent. There's still, I think, all the schools now. The Slate Valley was one of the last ones to get their budget passed. So during session, the yield bill was a hot potato. The Democrats didn't want it, the Republicans didn't want it, and the governor didn't want it. Nobody wanted their name attached to it because it was such a significant increase. Personally, I'm only going to share my opinion, but it is shared by quite a few people. I always read the governor's veto messages, and usually there's some good context in it, some well thought out thoughts. This one I totally disagreed with, and the analogy that I use, that Governor Scott's plan, was basically paying the minimum on your credit card. It buys you time, but it does not do anything for your balance. And he would have drained the reserve fund in the education, and it would have kicked the can down the road into future years. So the bill would have still been the same. It's just that it would have been spread out farther down the line. And if anybody's got a crystal ball and know exactly what's going to be in 2, 3, 5 years, good luck. That's it on the yield bill. Now I'll go back to my list, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
This is kind of a legislative update on the bill. I picked out a few bills that I think affect your town. Act 171 was an ethics bill. I didn't vote for it. It had a long section on state requirements, and then the second half was all municipal. As it stands right now, there's going to be required training. You may already have some ethics bill. Anyway, they're creating an ethics commission. They're going to write up the rules. They're going to come out with the training. You folks are going to be required to undergo the training every 3 years. Not only you folks, the budget committee, the cemetery commission, the clerk, the tax collector, the department heads, listers, moderator, planning commission, road commissioners, and treasurer all have to go through ethics training.
And will there be a fee for the training?
Of course.
I don't know. I can't imagine. My gut feeling is it'll be something you'll do at home online.
But that starts in 2025. That's next year, the training.
To do it.
To start.
That's already been released?
I think that's what I heard, that it was going to be next year.
Okay.
For training requirements.
I found that it was intrusive, especially, I mean, by Vermont standards, you're a moderate sized municipality, maybe a little bit lower than that. But many of these communities, I'm going to be at Baltimore tomorrow night, that's 250 people with 3 select board members that basically run the town. And it's a little bit unrealistic to think that all the effort they put in, now this is going to get piled on top of them. Vermont Leagues and City and Towns was opposed to it. There's a procedure you can do in legislature to have a bill divided, and I asked to have the municipal part divided from the state part, and it didn't pass muster. So anyway, that's coming down the line. I'm going to go over just very quickly, because the time's already. The age to marry has been raised to 18. Act 13 prohibits paramilitary training within the state of Vermont. Act 18, which is the green heat standard that created such a stir a couple years ago, That's coming back in the current, next legislature with the information from the PUC that'll have concrete numbers, not, not numbers that are just pulled out of the air like they have been. And we'll know, you'll know exactly what it's gonna cost if that full plan is implemented. It's still gonna go through one more vote of the legislature to become law. Act 24 is a crime against healthcare workers, and that covers fire department when they're responding to calls. Somebody could be charged, if somebody attacks a healthcare worker, firefighter, first responder, the police do not have to witness the attack. They can charge the person just on information that's available. Act 30 would put more restrictions on the sheriff's department. The sheriff, the laws controlling the sheriff's departments have been very lax and not very thorough, so there's a little more on that. Some good legislation was Act 34, 35, 36, and 37, which allows, it's compact licensing for healthcare workers of different levels that'll make it much easier for somebody from out of state to get their licensing in Vermont, and hopefully that'll help with some of our labor shortages. This is one that'll affect your tax. Act 106 was affected tax sales and abatements, and what originally came through Emily Kornheiser's committee was truly horrific. You would have had to have, somebody would have had to build a $20,000 back taxes before you could even start the process. It got whittled down. The Senate whittled it down even more. There are some additional requirements, what I think are perfectly appropriate, of notifications and allowing taxpayers to enter into payment. And this will make it uniform across the state. I think the way the bill was finally finished, I think was pretty good. However, you won't be able to start a tax sale until a full year has elapsed. I don't know what your policy is, but it's probably something like that. So consequently, by the time you start it, they're probably behind 2 years. But I think everybody would be in agreement, you aren't doing taxpayers any favor by letting them get behind. Act 120, some people think this is gun control. You still could order parts to assemble a gun with no serial number right now. Under the new law, you still can do that. You still can build the gun, but you got to take it to a licensed gun shop to have it serialized. Why not? I mean, you may keep it in your inventory for a while, but someday you're going to be dead, and then that gun enters into the public domain. This is one I voted against, Act 122. Now we're going to take on big oil. We're going to enter into a lawsuit against big oil for climate change and try to recover some of the costs that the state's incurred. Act 135, you're going to see some experimental work on highway work zones. It'd be signed. There's going to be mechanical means. If you're speeding, you can be issued a ticket without an officer pulling you over. Act 148, town highway aid. That's actually up a little bit from what was projected. And those were the highlight bills that I thought might affect you folks.
Okay,
Any
good.
questions?
Thank you.
No? Okay, if we're all set, we'll end this here, citizens, and we'll move on to new business. We have to present errors and omissions in the 2024 grand list.
So I do have, Diane did give this to me for everybody to have a copy. There was a parcel in town, parcel 77, is not on our grand list. It has not been on our grand list for as far back as 2002. Recently, this was discovered when Vermont Transco filed paperwork to transfer this property to Green Mountain Power. Having no span number, we could not do that. So it needs to be added under the errors and omissions process. This parcel is on our parcel maps, And it does say it's owned by Vermont Transco. It's just not on our grand list. And Diane did a lot of research on this, and we don't know where it fell off, but it's been quite a while.
I'll move we put parcel 77 onto the grand list.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right, we'll move on to dangerous building update.
So at the last select board meeting, we discussed the buildings on Depot Street. So in the meantime, I believe on July 1st, I went in with the deputy chief of Proctorsville and the health inspector to inspect the building, and it is extremely dangerous. It is ready to fall in. Something needs to be done. It needs to be done quickly. I was there last fall. It was nothing like this, and I don't believe it's going to make another winter. And it's the proximity to the neighboring house. It's really close. So I just want the board's okay with this building safety order, which basically says within 30 days of receipt of this notice that they have to submit in writing their plan, kind of a corrective action plan. But within 60 days of receipt, the buildings must be removed. There's no other way to do it. If within those 30 days they have a licensed engineer come say they can do something, then I don't know if anybody's going to stamp that and
Right.
say that it's okay. But that's giving them until September 15th to correct this. And the reason I want to do it so quickly is if nothing gets done, the town might have to act and do something.
Has either neighbor complained, said anything?
The neighbor on the closest to the house had earlier this spring, really worried about it. I couldn't see it from the road, but once I went to the back side of the building is literally cracked in half and separated. The foundation had fallen down, and when it did, it moved that side of the building. I did have another neighbor say that they have seen kids playing in the barn, and that barn is ready to come down at any moment. So,
Do we have an address?
246
Thanks.
and 236. There's two properties there.
246 and 236.
Mhm. But with the board's blessing, I will mail this out by certified mail tomorrow.
Bless you. That'd be fine.
It's your pleasure.
I make a motion that we have the town manager mail this safety order out to the owners of the house in question and get moving on this.
I'll second it.
I will not be voting on that because it's a family member. So I'm all for it, it's gotta go, but I just legally cannot vote.
Abstain.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain?
Abstain.
Come on.
Okay. Paving update.
The paving happened quicker than I anticipated this year, which is great. And I did get a little bit of an update on where we're at with that. Weather permitting, today they did pave some of the base course on Whitesville Road. Tomorrow they will be milling Whitesville Road and 20 Mile Stream. So I'll make sure everybody knows 20 Mile Stream will be go down to one lane, but it will remain open while they're doing that.
How, from where to where on 20 Mile?
Johnson Road, basically.
Well, basically the Johnson Road area in those corners, I think it's 1,600 feet.
Like Johnsonville or Johnson to like Health.
Just, you can actually see a cut in the road. I think it's 984. I'd hate to say that. Right around 984, 20 Mile Stream, you can see where the paving stopped probably the last time.
Yep.
So from there to just past Johnson Road or right around Johnson Road on the other side. So through those corners. It's not the perfect fix. We're not doing the base. We're not tearing the road up completely. We're just trying to get some pavement to make the road last until we can really get there, really.
I'm sure they will, but I noticed on top of Whitesville, it's the Center Road rather, when it rains, there's this huge puddle, and they're still there, so I guess they'll fix that, but I wanted to.
I'm sure that'll be part of it. I mean, they put under drains up through there as well. And they're stone lining the ditch, and they're doing
Right.
more than just the paving there, so. And then,
So when is that, that 2-week closure thing still is a little bit off, or that's happening soon?
this is why I brought it up, because it's happening faster than I thought, and they may be out of here, weather permitting, by Wednesday or Thursday. Done with 20 mile and done, completely done.
So there won't be a 2-week closure?
They've kind of closed it anyways. We didn't get as much notification as we had asked for. The first time they closed it, when they did all the work, we wanted a 2-week notice. They came in and gave us a day. I let them come in because let's get this done. They had a project it did put a little hardship on everybody because we couldn't give them enough notice. But it's gonna be done real soon.
So is it open at night? Can I go back?
It's gonna be open at night again, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They're supposed to continue to keep open, even the next few days, they're supposed to continue to open it at night, so.
Okay. So it's basically, 7 to 5?
7 to 5 is what I was told, but I do know it, I was told that it was closed all night one time. Wasn't what we knew, but it must have been how they had to leave it that night.
But it was closed on the 4th of July, 'cause when I was coming back late that night, I couldn't get through there.
Last Thursday it was as well? Oh, maybe that was the day I,
Many people have been posting that it is closed at night. Yeah. So I don't know why, but I know it was closed on, because we had to take somebody home, so we went over that way, and we had to go back.
originally when I talked to them, it was, and I posted it, they were gonna open it up every night at 5 o'clock. So I
Sites can
didn't
get
know.
left up, and it's really open, and, I'm not.
Because when I was coming in a lot in the morning, I would notice the one down on 131 wasn't saying it was closed, but I didn't see the one up on
I'm
Davis.
talking, I was coming up the other way. Yeah.
But we're gonna have new roads and they're gonna be out of here by the end of this week, so.
All right, move on to 4. Library ARPA adjustment request.
So we have, when the library first asked for the ARPA funds for their ADA door operators, they asked for 2,500. They got quotes for that. They're looking for some more help because it didn't cover what they anticipated. Without the electrical work, it's $4,500, $4,554. And so they're asking if there is an additional ARPA funds available, if they could receive an additional $2,500 to cover the cost of the operators and some of the electrical work. Because they've already had the 25, they're looking for 5,000 total. I do have their quotes here.
Do we have the 2,500 in the upper fund?
We do.
I'll move we amend the ARPA allotment to the library up to 5,000.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, we'll move on to outdoor storage of junk, the junk vehicles ordinance. Discussion.
Last month's select board meeting, we talked about having this to start the discussion on this already existing ordinance for the town. So that's where we're at, ready to discuss moving forward or doing something and how that looks with this ordinance.
For me, that's the rub. Because when you get to the 3rd page, Article 3, Enforcement and Penalties, upon receiving written notice from the select board to do so,
Who's Who's the enforcer?
Right, not who's the enforcer, but how do we say we're doing this evenly throughout the town? We're not just picking on the people who live on Main Street or Depot or, 20 Mile Stream Road that everybody drives down, or Center Road that everybody drives down and sees. We're doing it equally, and it's like, you can't, part of me thought, well, we could just ask town people to, if they complain, but then it turns neighbor against neighbor. I don't wanna be doing that. It has to be something that we can enforce. So that's the rub for me, is like, when does a select board give notice? So is it like once a year we have to like go around and survey areas? Like, I don't know.
I'm not sure what that looks like either. I mean, I think the start would be having a complete list of everyone.
Right.
That would fit with this, and it's gonna be a lot of properties. Just by the way it's written, there would be a lot of people. And it would take quite a lot of time and effort because, like you said, we're not gonna drive down Main Street or Depot Street or 20 Mile Stream. It's gonna be everybody in the whole town to
Right.
keep it equitable. And
Like, we have how many miles of road?
62, was it? So,
No. You get somebody to drive up and down each road and look and see and make a list, and I don't wanna put it on the road crews. They already have enough to do without looking around, and
they have plenty to do, and it's not like nobody turns a blind eye. It's just not what you're focused on when
right.
you're out there.
I don't want them focused on that. I want them focused on the other stuff they're doing, so.
So then it comes down to, how do we do this, and do you end up, is it time for the town to hire, like, somebody that can do this or enforcement of these and the follow-up of these? Because it's very time consuming. And I've heard in the past that, I know Chester hasn't done theirs. I mean, I didn't talk to them, but it's the pure time and expense of doing these.
Yeah.
It's just not easy.
Yeah, and I think, even if we do, this idea of like strict enforcement, I mean, maybe we just ought to like start with some sort of, a letter to those properties and see where it goes, rather than, because there's a lot, and like you say, enforcement, you just can't hire, you would have to hire sheriffs, and, it'd be a big deal, a lot of money.
It would be a lot of money.
You're not recouping.
Yeah, no, you're not gonna recoup the money.
So,
No.
really, it is, it's difficult, but, maybe some sort of.
Let me ask this, without stating any names or anything, how many complaints have we had in the last year? Or since you've been on board, probably, about people complaining about, are we barking up a tree that doesn't need to be?
I'm trying to think of even if I've gotten one. I have had some, there's one property, but that's it was more of an access, not from the junk standpoint,
Well,
because we have a right of way that,
the town has a right of way, and it's now a toxic site. And people can't get there, and I'm having to deal with a lot of those complaints.
which is a right of way
Yeah.
part,
But it's also all the leakage of fuel and all of that. And
Now, anything of leakage of fuel or anything like that, there's different avenues that everybody should know. If there is leaking of fuel, or if there is like a health hazard, a lot of what this covers isn't health related as much.
Right,
But-
it's seeing it, but in this case, it's an access issue.
Right. But there is health things where we should be going in there if it's a health problem and doing it from that standpoint.
And in this particular case, which I talked to you about, we talked about it before, there was a person that had built a camp up on what is town land, and they're living there, so that means all sorts of things. And that's not the only town property that's happened to. There was another property, but that one was resolved.
But again, that's not junk, that'd be more of a health concern.
Probably, yeah. Okay, so you're saying that there are other avenues we can address the
Absolutely. If there's garbage or there's a health issue to it, we can do it from health. I mean, if there's leaking fluids, the state's even gonna wanna get involved with, you know, their enforcement officers on anything like that, especially on any outside property out of town. I mean, the state owns the drainage down there in the main street, so anything that leaks and can get into drainage or anything that get into the waters of the state, they wanna know about.
This all started because of one property. It was before your time that we started looking into this and how to do it fairly and evenly. But if we're not getting a whole lot of complaints,
Not getting a whole lot of complaints, and like I said, if we did, we took them from a health standpoint more than, and then we would, you know,
then maybe
go
we
right
should,
to them.
right, address it that way.
Millman property you're talking about, you know, you don't want to send a health officer by yourself.
I was gonna say.
You want to take a
that's
sheriff or
really
somebody
gonna
with
have to be
authority to go to that
a
place.
RIC issue, and it is also a town issue because that is town property that is being lost.
Right,
Yeah.
That one I have to address no matter what, not even through the junk ordinance. It's,
Right.
right.
okay. And I would suggest you take Kevin with you.
Yeah, you definitely want somebody, you don't want to go alone.
you know,
Yeah, we call the sheriff and ask.
Yep.
We contract with them for
sometimes I
several
feel like
hours,
those
so-
things escalate.
They do.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, bringing somebody there with you initially tends to escalate, but
With him, you're
And I
gonna,
don't want it to,
with him,
you
you're
know,
gonna want to,
I think it's possible.
yes.
I'd like to treat everybody fairly, but if it's a health and/or the fact that it's town property.
Yeah.
then-
I mean, those are different avenues than the junk ordinance. The junk ordinance, call it the junk or it's junk vehicle and junk. You know, it's different. And there would be a lot of properties, not just from. I mean, a lot of properties don't have vehicles, but they might have a couple little things outside that would qualify them as the junk ordinance. So those people would have to get a letter as much as
Right.
anybody else, and you know. And you're right. If you had neighbors doing it, it's Pitt's neighbor versus neighbor. They don't like what their neighbor's doing, and
Yeah,
it's
I don't wanna get into that. But if, obviously, if we had
But if it came-
complaints, then we'd have to
then
address.
exactly.
All right, anybody good with that? Great.
I'm sorry, did you have a question? Comment?
Yeah, I'm wondering where we're leaving this. So it sounds as though, one, there is a process.
Yes.
Right.
But right now, if we're not getting complaints about,
Well,
to the extent that
Sure.
we should be, oh my God, worried about it, because there's like at least 10 places in town, and we should start traveling the roads and finding
well,
out.
I also wonder if no one's saying anything because they're not clear that there's a process, nor if it's being, and if there is a process that's not being enforced.
Well, we've been talking about it for a year, over a year now, off and on, at
For a
several
while.
meetings. So if anybody brought up stuff, or we felt, if we had a group of people that came and said, listen, we need you guys to start doing this more often because of, then we would have to come up with a way to make sure we traveled to all the roads in town and took notes and,
And how many properties are kind of on the list or of concern, or however you want to word it?
I don't even know, really.
well,
Don't
it's,
have a number, but I would think there would be.
when you read through the whole ordinance, which is 4 pages long, it's, you know, it has to be seen from somebody's yard to another neighbor's yard or from the road. And if they put up a fence and you can't see it, then it doesn't exist type thing. And so there's all this stuff. So just because you know something's there doesn't mean it falls under our ordinance.
Sure. So is it 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20?
I'd say it's 20 plus.
Wow.
That would fit into.
Fit into the ordinance.
so
That's
let
where
me
they
get
want to
this.
address the health pieces and not just.
See, the absolute, the health piece, I mean, anybody can call.
Or said
Me,
differently, you want a prioritization
Right,
process.
and well, we could take care of that
Right,
under
but if-
the health. You
But
know.
if neighbors are letting, you know, that I don't care what my neighbor does type thing, and they're letting it go, I'm asking, are we making something out of nothing that exists? Like, do we have to?
Do we have a junkyard ordinance? Because we did it one time.
Yeah,
Is
we
that-
do.
Yeah, we do.
So we need to be safe that it's there, but at this point, you're not doing anything about enforcing it unless,
It's a health issue.
Well, that a lot of the concerning issues can be covered under.
Well, it'd be like a house that's falling down and
Right,
nobody's
right,
taking care of
right,
it.
right.
It crosses a line
Right.
into
Right.
something else.
So
And-
that unless there's a real issue that this is just very specific to, there's no need to start hiring people and.
Right. Because right now we have nobody to enforce it.
Because
Well, I
again,
understand, that's always been the issue.
again, even though I'm the one who keeps bringing this up and wants to talk about it, because I don't know how we can and do it fairly and equally, I'm also of the mind that I don't like to tell my neighbors what to do with their yards, because
Right,
I don't want to be an
understand.
HOA town. So, one man's junk is,
Your treasure.
yeah.
Somebody else's artwork, I don't know. I mean,
That's why we have yard sale every year. Try to get rid of as much as we can out of the house.
We have a yard sale, not a junkyard ordinance.
But if there's any concern about health, whether it's, and like you said, even leaking fluids or anything like that,
Then it
that
crosses a line.
constitutes
and
pretty serious.
So there's other ways we can
Right.
address this issue. Okay.
But
Once
the ordinance is there for a
Yes.
purpose.
Yeah, and we
If
have
it's needed.
addressed
But
certain,
it
certain
sounds as
places
though we're
and it's
saying,
worked.
since we don't
so.
have the resources to address it, that we're gonna
Well,
deprioritize it, which I don't think that's necessarily the right way to think about it.
Right.
well, the resources and or
The need.
the outcry
Right.
for,
No one's
if
complaining.
we had a group of people that came and said, you really need to do it, then we'd have to come up with a way to do it. But right now, everybody's kind of letting their neighbors be and everybody's getting along for the most part. And there are houses that we know of that now have crossed the line because of health issues, and we're addressing those that way, or safety issues. So we'll address them through that venue, because the last time we tried to address a house through this venue, the gentleman whose house it was came down and was very upset because we were singling him out.
Right.
And if we were gonna do him, we had to do every single house in town and survey them, and I understood what he was saying. That just because he lives on a well-traveled road doesn't mean he should be the only one that has to follow the ordinance.
Yeah, I agree with that
So-
perspective, but then when does something that's not a health concern go over a line that it's a bigger concern that should be addressed?
I think what they're saying is that's subjective,
Right, and right now we haven't reached that.
Now, 'cause no one's caring.
right?
Pretty much.
It's- Should I back up? It's
But if you,
Is it 5 cars, is it 10 cars, is it 15?
Oh, yeah, it was
Or
only
maybe it's whether
two,
you
I think.
I think
Or-
it's
You
three.
lobbied for 4, I
Well, it
I
has-
lobbied for 3, I think.
it's cars that are unregistered or,
Yeah, unregistered.
Which, to be honest, I was thinking about this today. In the state of Vermont, you don't even get the little sticker for your license plate. I couldn't tell you if the car's registered or not.
But we did have a case where somebody had a whole lot of cars.
And we
in
did
their
get rid of those.
backyard.
Yeah,
Remember that one? And you all took care of that under
Right.
that ordinance. But think about this, you've got all these cars there, they are going to be leaking oil
Yeah.
and other contaminants in, so that technically would have fallen under
Help.
environmental impact. So,
And I believe that did.
that did, it really did, you're right, Bob.
All right. Now we'll move on to manager's report.
Well, I didn't have time to write up what I was gonna talk about, but I will say a little something. I want to thank, well, Margot was here, so I want to make sure I thank, we've had this group, kind of led by Margot, going out and cleaning all the ditches in town. I got to get a new list because they were moving quite quickly. They're doing great work. They're just kind of surveying them, cleaning them up. And if there's any bigger need that can't be addressed, bringing it to our attention so the town can take care of it. You know, we're all worried about the rain and ditching, and without clean ditches, it just plugs up culverts and then you have bigger issues. So they're doing a lot of good work, and I want to make sure people know that they are still out there. You'll see them. They do have orange vests on, but just be careful. That's basically what they're doing. And to that fact, I want to remind everybody that now that we are in kind of this season, in the rain season, and 1 year away from the flooding, that if you have ditches on your own property, it's important to look at them too and and pick up any debris and sticks and clear them to help keep them clear.
And Brad has now started their culvert crawlers program, which I'm working with Kelly on, so that if a homeowner really can't clean out their ditch, we can bring volunteers in and equipment and take care of it. But everything we do for the town, everything is run through Rick and Fawn, and the students are gonna get to meet with Rick and Fawn, and they're really looking forward. They have a lot of questions. And they're great. They're like students in civil engineering. One guy we had, his job was to work for the railroads and do ditches, drains, and culverts. We didn't have to say anything. He trained everybody, and he'd bring his truck that he would use for the railroad. He came and brought it. And then we had that wonderful day with Turco. He came and he stopped and showed him that, no, this wasn't silt, this was actually a beaver who was making their home in the culvert, and the students like to go back, and if it's not cleaned out that day, they'll clean it out. So it's a good, really wonderful group of kids from Dartmouth. We're really lucky to have them.
Good. And we're gonna have to start sharing them with Ludlow, but that's okay.
But I've made sure the priority is here first.
We can share a little bit.
Yeah, we can. We will work with them.
And I just also want to remind people that you can sign up for VT alerts. We still use that. You know, the town has adopted VT alerts for notifications. And you can sign up for that. And you can pick and choose what you want too. I mean, there's a lot in there if you don't have it. And what, did you guys get the alerts but the road was closed? And and the last thing I do want to report on the new town truck. The body is done, and it is almost ready to be delivered. So we're working on that and have it here soon.
Good. That it?
That is it.
Dave, you have anything on other business? Shannon? George?
The only thing I wanted to ask if anybody knew that there was this group that was over here, these lab guys.
Yeah, they're gone.
Cavendish, are they still around?
Yeah, I've reached out to them and I haven't heard back. The last I heard, they were in California, but I will reach out to them again.
Yeah, I just did.
They were very helpful.
Well, they ended up having to leave because it was.
Yeah, they just rented for it. They said they were going to find some other
Well, they
place.
had-
So I was curious.
Well, they went to California for the winter because they had a good thing there,
Yeah.
but their plan is to come back.
Okay, I
I'm
was
hoping they're
curious.
gonna buy.
Yeah.
I've even told them where they should buy.
All right, Mike?
Nope, I'm good.
I'm good.
I had something at one point.
You're all set?
If I don't write
Weeks ago, and I thought I gotta bring that up, and I can't think of what it was, so.
All right, hear a motion to adjourn.
I will make said motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None?